The darkness of space held many secrets, but none darker than the 6 ships that moved through the void like sharks circling wounded prey. Their hulls were painted the color of dried blood, marked with symbols that made peaceful species tremble. These were Koresh hunting vessels, and they had found their target. Captain Vrexkal stood on the bridge of his flagship, his scaled fingers drumming against the command console. His yellow eyes tracked the 3 smaller ships trapped in the center of his formation. They were Threen vessels, cargo ships with minimal weapons and shields that were already failing. The ambush had been perfect. His hunters had waited near the nebula for 2 full cycles, patient as stone until the Threen convoy passed through. The Threen were prey species, soft-bodied creatures with large eyes and gentle natures. They built beautiful ships and created art that sold across the galaxy, but they could not fight. They never could. That was why the Koresh hunted them. Easy targets meant easy profit, and the Koresh hierarchy did not concern itself with the complaints of herbivores. Hull breaches on the second vessel, his tactical officer reported. The officer's voice carried satisfaction. Their shields are at 15%. The others are attempting to cover it, but their weapons cannot penetrate our armor. Vrexkal nodded slowly. This was how it always went. The Koresh had perfected this dance over thousands of years. Circle the prey, cut off escape routes, jam communications, strike at the engines and shields until the prey could neither flee nor defend itself. Then board and take everything of value. Sometimes they kept the crew alive for ransom. Sometimes they did not. It depended on whether the prey fought back. Through the viewport, he could see the Threen ships trying desperately to maintain formation. Their engines flared as they attempted to break through the Koresh circle, but his hunters moved with them, matching every maneuver. It was almost beautiful in its precision. 6 predators moving as one, each knowing exactly where the others would be. Captain Menos is broadcasting again, the communications officer said. Same message. Distress call on all standard frequencies. Let him broadcast, Vrexkal said, showing his teeth in what passed for a Koresh smile. We are in deep space, far from the trade routes. By the time anyone receives his call and decides to respond, we will be gone with his cargo. Perhaps we will leave his ships intact this time. I am feeling generous. The bridge crew made sounds of amusement. They all knew that generosity from Vrexkal usually meant he would not destroy the life support systems before leaving. The Threen would survive barely, drifting in dead ships until rescue came days or weeks later. If rescue came at all. Target their engines, Vrexkal commanded. I want them dead in space within the next 10 minutes. Then we board. The Koresh ships tightened their circle. Weapons that could crack planetary shields focused on the small drives that kept the Threen vessels moving. This was the end game. Soon the hunt would be over, and they would claim their prize. On the lead Threen vessel, Captain Menos watched his console with growing despair. The numbers told a story he did not want to read. Shields failing, weapons ineffective, engines taking damage. His crew of 43 souls looked to him for hope, and he had none to give. Keep broadcasting the distress signal, he told his communications officer. His voice was steady despite the fear that gripped his hearts. The Threen had 2 hearts, both of which were beating far too fast. Someone may hear. Someone may come. Captain, we are 3 days from the nearest outpost, his first officer said quietly. Even if someone hears, even if they decide to help, we do not have 3 days. We have minutes. Menos knew this. He had known it from the moment the Koresh ships appeared on their sensors, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect ambush formation. The Koresh were professionals. They did not make mistakes. His small convoy had been doomed from the start. Nevertheless, we keep broadcasting, Menos said. It is all we can do. We are not warriors. We cannot fight them. But we can hope that someone, somewhere, believes that distress calls should be answered. The ship shuddered as another Koresh weapon struck their weakening shields. Damage reports flooded in. Hull breach on Deck 3, life support failing in Section 7. Engine 2 operating at 30%. The list went on, each item another nail in their coffin. Menos had a family. His mate and 3 children waited for him on the Threen homeworld. He thought of them now, wondered if he would ever see them again. The Koresh sometimes kept captives alive for ransom, but just as often they did not. There was no way to know which fate awaited him and his crew. Contact from the second ship, his communications officer reported. They are requesting permission to attempt a breakthrough. They want to try running the blockade. Denied. Menno said immediately. They would be destroyed in seconds. We stay together. If we die as a fleet. On Vrexkal's bridge, the tactical display showed the Threen ships clustering together, trying to protect each other with their failing shields. It was touching in a pathetic sort of way. Prey species always did this. They grouped together at the end as if friendship could stop hunter weapons. Strange reading, Captain, his sensor officer said suddenly. I am picking up a contact at the edge of the system. Vrexkal glanced at the sensor display. A single blip barely registering. Debris, he said dismissively. This system has an asteroid field. You're seeing rocks, might perhaps, the sensor officer said, but he did not sound convinced. The signature is odd. It appeared suddenly. Focus on the prey in front of us, Vrexkal snapped. We are minutes from victory. I will not be distracted by sensor ghosts. The officer returned to his station, but something about the contact bothered him. The way it had appeared, the way it moved, it did not behave like debris or asteroids. It behaved like a ship running silent, trying not to be noticed. Vrexkal was already thinking about the profits from this hunt. Threen cargo was valuable. Art, exotic foods, rare materials. He would be able to upgrade his fleet with the earnings. Perhaps add a seventh hunter to his formation. More ships meant bigger prey, and bigger prey meant greater glory for his name. The boarding pods were being prepared. His warriors were checking their weapons and armor. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Threen would surrender or be overwhelmed. Their cargo would be transferred. Then his fleet would vanish back into deep space before anyone could respond to their distress calls. It was a perfect hunt. Vrexkal had executed this same pattern dozens of times. He knew every step, every move. There were no surprises in hunting prey species. That was his first mistake. The contact at the edge of the system was not debris. It was not an asteroid. It was something the Koresh had not encountered before. Something they did not understand. It was a ship from a world where prey became predators, where the hunted learned to hunt, where survival meant evolving into something that refused to die quietly. It was a human ship, and it was coming. 4 hours earlier, the patrol frigate Defiant Resolve had been running a standard sweep of the outer sectors when Lieutenant Sarah Kovac picked up something on the communications array. She was the tactical officer. Young for her position, but sharp as they came. Her family had served in Earth's navies for 6 generations, back when navies meant ships on water instead of ships in space. Captain, I have a distress signal, she called out. Threen vessels under attack. Coordinates are 3 light years from here. Captain Maria Chen looked up from the report she had been reading. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray starting to show in her black hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many hard decisions. She had commanded the Defiant Resolve for 8 years. Ever since humanity had been allowed to patrol beyond their own solar system. Details, she said simply. Kovac pulled up the information on the main display. 3 civilian cargo vessels. They are reporting Koresh hunters, 6 hostile ships, standard hunting formation. The Threen are outgunned and their shields are failing. How long until we can reach them? Chen asked. At maximum burn 3 hours and 40 minutes, the helmsman reported. But Captain, we are outside our patrol zone. This is not our jurisdiction. Chen stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, stars stretched in all directions, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, people were dying. People who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place when predators came calling. Show me everything we have on the Koresh, she said. The ship's xenobiologist, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, brought up files on the main screen. Images of reptilian creatures with yellow eyes and scaled skin appeared. The Koresh hierarchy is one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations, Tanaka explained. They are apex predators from a high-gravity world. Physically strong, aggressive, and they have been conducting what they call hunting raids for over 3,000 years. You mean piracy, Chen said flatly. They call it hunting. The Galactic Council tolerates it because the Koresh have not signed the protection treaties. Technically, they are not breaking any laws. Technically, Chen repeated. The word tasted bitter. And the Threen? Peaceful species, herbivores. They have been council members for 800 years. They make art and trade goods. They do not have a military. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Her crew watched her, waiting. They all knew what she was thinking. The Defiant Resolve was 1 ship. The Koresh had 6. Humans were still new to the galactic community. Only 80 years since first contact. They had been warned repeatedly to avoid conflicts with established species. But Maria Chen had not joined the Earth Defense Fleet to watch people die when she could help them. Chief Rodriguez, she called to the engineering station. I need everything our engines can give. I do not care if you have to duct tape the reactor together. Get me to those coordinates in under 4 hours. Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez grinned. He was a stocky man with grease permanently under his fingernails and a tendency to talk to the ship's systems like they were his children. You want the full burn, Captain? The one that makes the safety systems cry? That is exactly what I want. Then strap in, everyone. This is going to be rough. Rodriguez's fingers flew across his console, overriding safeties and pushing the fusion reactor past its rated limits. The ship shuddered as power flooded into the engines. Kovac, pull everything we have on Koresh tactics, Chen ordered. I want to know how they fight, how they think, what they expect. For the next 3 hours, the crew of the Defiant Resolve studied their enemy. They learned that the Koresh always hunted in packs, never alone. That they preferred to circle their prey and wear them down. That they were confident, perhaps overconfident in their superiority. That they had never fought humans before. That last part was important. They will not know what we can do, Kovac said, reading through tactical reports. We have only been in space for 80 years. Most of our combat history is classified or happened in our own system. To them, we are unknowns. Good, Chen said. We use that. Dr. Tanaka, what do the Koresh fear? The xenobiologist considered the question. They are predators, Captain. Predators fear other predators. They fear being outmatched. They fear becoming prey themselves. Then that is what we show them, Chen said. A plan was forming in her mind. Risky and possibly insane, but it might work. We do not arrive and ask them politely to stop. We arrive and we show them what happens when they pick on species under human protection. Captain, Kovac said carefully, the Threen are not under human protection. We have no treaty with them. No formal alliance. They sent a distress call, Chen replied. That is all the treaty I need. Any ship that answers a distress call is protecting that ship. It is an old law, older than spaceflight. It comes from Earth's oceans. When ships would sail for months and the only help you could expect was from whoever heard your call. The bridge crew absorbed this. Most of them had grown up in space, born on stations or colony ships. But they understood what their captain was saying. There were rules that went deeper than treaties and laws. There were rules about what it meant to be human. 15 minutes to contact, the helmsman announced. Dropping to sublight speeds. Go silent, Chen ordered. All systems to passive. I want us to drift in like ghosts. Kovac, ready weapons, but do not power them until I give the word. Rodriguez, I need the engines ready for full combat burn on my command. You want to hit them before they know we are there, Kovac said, understanding dawning. I want to hit them so hard they forget their own names, Chen corrected. The Threen are still broadcasting. That means they are still alive. We are not too late. The Defiant Resolve dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, engines cold, running on momentum and minimal thrusters. To the Koresh sensors, if they noticed at all, it would look like debris or a small asteroid. Nothing to worry about. On the bridge, the crew watched the tactical display. 6 Koresh ships in a perfect hunting circle. 3 Threen vessels clustered in the center. Shields nearly gone, engines damaged. It was an execution in progress. Chen's jaw tightened. She had seen this before, back when she was younger, serving on a colony defense ship. Pirates attacking a civilian transport. By the time her ship arrived, there had been nothing left but wreckage and bodies. She still remembered the faces of the colonists they had failed to save. Not this time, not on her watch. Dr. Tanaka, compose a message in Koresh language, she said. Tell them that these ships are under human protection. Tell them to withdraw immediately. Captain, should we not send that before we attack? Tanaka asked. Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Who said anything about sending it before? We send it after. I want them to know exactly who hurt them. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of systems. They were close now. Close enough to see the Koresh ships through the viewport. Close enough to strike? All crew battle stations, Chen announced shipwide. We are going in hot. Make your ancestors proud. The Defiant Resolve came alive. Engines flared from cold to full burn in seconds. Weapons powered up, shields snapped into place. And then, like a predator that had been waiting in the dark, the human ship accelerated directly at the 2 nearest Koresh vessels. On Vrexikal's bridge, alarms began screaming. The contact they had dismissed as debris was now showing itself to be a warship, and it was coming at them with velocity that should have torn any ship apart. The hunt was about to become very different. The universe had a way of teaching lessons to those who thought they understood everything. Captain Vrexkull was about to receive an education. "Contact accelerating," his sensor officer shouted. "Velocity is impossible. They should be experiencing fatal forces." Vrexkull stared at the display in disbelief. The unknown ship was not just moving fast. It was moving at speeds that would crush most species into paste against the back of their chairs. Whatever this ship was, whoever was flying it, they were either insane or built very differently from normal spacefaring races. "Two ships, break and intercept," Vrexkull ordered. "Standard engagement pattern." The rest maintained position on the prey. Two of his hunters peeled away from the circle around the three vessels. They were confident, moving with the practiced ease of warriors who had won every fight they had ever been in. The Koresh ships were heavily armored, with weapons that could pierce capital ship hulls. Whatever this newcomer was, it would learn not to interfere with a Koresh hunt. That confidence lasted exactly 30 more seconds. The human ship did not slow down. It did not attempt to dodge. It came straight at the two Koresh vessels like a missile, and at the last possible moment, it did something that made Vrexkull's blood run cold. It drifted. The defiant resolve cut its engines and fired its lateral thrusters at full power. The ship rotated 90 degrees while still moving forward at incredible speed, presenting its weapons to the Koresh vessels while maintaining its momentum. Physics should not have allowed it. The forces involved should have killed everyone aboard. But humans had been born on a death world where gravity tried to crush them every day. They had evolved to handle forces that would kill softer species, and they had built their ships to take advantage of that. "Fire," Chen commanded. Railguns thundered in the silence of space. Solid slugs of dense metal accelerated to a fraction of light speed hammered into the first Koresh ship. The impacts overwhelmed its shields in seconds and tore through the armored hull like paper. Systems exploded. Atmosphere vented into space. The Koresh ship went dark, tumbling away from the engagement. The second Koresh vessel tried to turn, tried to bring its weapons to bear, but the human ship was already past it. A nuclear-pumped torpedo launched, a weapon that most species had banned as too barbaric for modern warfare. Humans had no such restrictions. The torpedo detonated between the two Koresh ships. The electromagnetic pulse washed over both vessels, frying their electronics, killing their systems, leaving them dead in space. Not destroyed, but helpless. Floating targets. The entire engagement had lasted less than 15 seconds. On his bridge, Vrexkull felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Not the thrill of the hunt, not the excitement of danger, but actual terror at the realization that he might die today. "Recall all ships," he shouted. "Form defensive sphere, now." His remaining 4 hunters abandoned the Threen vessels and raced toward him, taking up positions in a protective formation. It was the standard Koresh response to an unknown threat. Put all your ships in a tight group where they could support each other. Present a united front. Make it difficult for the enemy to isolate individual vessels. It was a good tactic. It had worked for thousands of years against dozens of species. It was about to fail spectacularly. The human ship slowed, coming to a relative stop several thousand kilometers away. Close enough to threaten, far enough to make targeting difficult. Vrexkull could see it clearly now on his view screen. It was smaller than his flagship, sleeker, with lines that suggested it was built for speed rather than durability. But there was something about it that set his scales itching. Something dangerous. "Get me a tactical analysis," he demanded. "What species is that? What are we facing?" His database officer worked frantically. "Searching. I have a match. That is a human vessel. Species classification. Recently spacefaring. Unproven in large-scale combat. Moderate technology level. Threat assessment. Low to moderate." "Your threat assessment is wrong," Vrexkull said quietly. Before anyone could respond, the communication system activated. A voice spoke in perfect Koresh language, the accent flawless, the tone calm and educational. "Attention Koresh vessels. This is Dr. Yuki Tanaka of the Earthship Defiant Resolve. You are currently engaged in hostile action against civilian vessels. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender, or we will resume fire. I should mention something interesting about human behavior. You hunt in packs, so do we. You should have asked who answered their call." Vrexkal's blood turned to ice. The human ship was not alone. The plural was important. They hunt in packs. So do we. Scan for additional contacts, he screamed. His sensor officer's hands shook as he worked. Captain, I am picking up 3 new signatures. They just appeared. They must have been running completely cold. A destroyer and 2 corvettes. They are forming an attack pattern. 3 more human ships dropped into normal space, their positions carefully chosen to create a triangle with the Threen vessels at the center and the Koresh formation caught between them. It was a wolf pack tactic, ancient and effective. Isolate the prey. Cut off escape. Attack from multiple angles. Except the Koresh were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. On the Threen flagship, Captain Menos watched in stunned disbelief. One moment they had been preparing to die. The next moment, ships with strange markings had appeared and attacked the Koresh with a ferocity he had never witnessed. Now 4 human vessels surrounded the Koresh formation, and the predators who had been so confident minutes ago looked lost. Who are they? His first officer asked. I do not know, Menos admitted. I have heard of humans. New species they keep to themselves mostly, but I have never heard of them doing this. Why would they help us? We have no alliance with them. No treaty. Menos had no answer. In his experience, species did not risk their lives for strangers. It made no sense by any logic he understood. And yet here were 4 human ships outnumbered but clearly unafraid, placing themselves between the Threen and certain death. On the defiant resolve, Captain Chen watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Koresh had done exactly what she had expected. They had clustered together like scared children, giving up their mobility advantage for the illusion of safety. Kovac, split them, she ordered. I want that formation broken. Show them what happens when prey fights back. The 4 human ships moved in perfect coordination. The destroyer went high. The 2 corvettes swept wide on the flanks, and the defiant resolve went straight down the middle. They did not circle. They did not wait. They attacked with the same aggression that the Koresh had shown the Threen, but with far greater skill. Koresh weapons fired, plasma bolts and particle beams lancing out. But the human ships moved like they were dancing, each one seeming to know where the others would be without needing to communicate. They had trained for this. Humans, who had fought wars on their homeworld for thousands of years, who had learned every dirty trick of combat, who had turned warfare into an art form. The first Koresh ship to break formation did so because a railgun slug punched through its engines. It drifted away from the group helpless. One of the human corvettes moved in, not to destroy but to disable, targeting weapons and propulsion with surgical precision. A second Koresh vessel took a missile strike that blew its weapon arrays into scrap metal. It was still intact, still survivable, but it could no longer fight. Vrexkal realized with growing horror that the humans were not trying to kill them. They were trying to capture them. This was not combat. This was a demonstration. The humans were showing the entire galaxy through the sensor records that would survive. What happened when you attacked the wrong prey? All ships, scatter, Vrexkal ordered. Break formation. Retreat at random vectors. It was the right call tactically. A scattered fleet was harder to engage than a grouped one, but it was also an admission of defeat, an acknowledgement that they could not win this fight. His hunters broke and ran, each one desperately accelerating in a different direction, hoping to escape the human net. One made it. One actually managed to get far enough away to begin charging its faster-than-light drive. The human destroyer shot it. A single railgun round, perfectly calculated, that struck the FTL drive just as it was beginning to spin up. The resulting explosion did not destroy the ship, but it crippled it, leaving it stranded in normal space. Of 6 Koresh hunters, 5 were now disabled or captured. Only Vrexkal's flagship remained combat-capable, and it was surrounded by 4 human ships that moved like sharks. Vrexkal stood alone on his bridge watching his fleet die around him. Not die in the literal sense, but die in every way that mattered. His hunters were disabled, helpless, drifting in space like the prey they had spent their lives hunting. The irony was not lost on him. His crew looked at him waiting for orders, waiting for him to find some clever tactic, some brilliant strategy that would turn this disaster around. But there was nothing. The humans had outmaneuvered them completely. Every time he tried to predict their movements, they did something unexpected. Every time he thought he understood their tactics, they showed him something new. "Captain," his weapons officer said quietly, "we cannot win this fight." It hurt to hear the words spoken aloud. Vrexcal had commanded his hunting fleet for 20 years. 20 years of successful raids, of perfect hunts, of prey that never escaped. He was a legend among his people, and now, in less than 10 minutes, an unknown species had reduced him to nothing. "They are hailing us," the communications officer reported. "On screen," Vrexcal said. He needed to see them. Needed to understand what kind of species could do this. The view screen activated, and Vrexcal found himself looking at a human female. She was older, with dark eyes that held no mercy. Behind her, he could see other humans working at stations, their movements efficient and calm. They were not celebrating their victory. They were simply doing their job. "I am Captain Maria Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet Vessel Defiant Resolve," the human said. Her voice was steady, almost gentle. It made what she said next even more terrifying. "You have two options, Captain. You can surrender your ship or you can die. I recommend surrender. We have already disabled 5 of your vessels. Your crew is alive on those ships because we chose to let them live. Do not make me regret that choice." Vrexcal wanted to snarl, wanted to rage, wanted to attack, even though he knew it was suicide. But he looked around his bridge at his crew, at warriors who trusted him to make the right decision. If he attacked, they would die. All of them. And for what? For pride? For the reputation of a hunter who had been outmatched? "If I surrender," he said slowly, "what happens to my crew?" "They will be detained," Chen replied. "Treated fairly under the laws of warfare. Fed, given medical care, and eventually returned to your people. We are not monsters, Captain. We do not torture prisoners. We do not execute the helpless. But we do hold people accountable for their actions, and me? You will face trial for piracy and attempted murder of civilian vessels. Whether your government chooses to acknowledge that trial is up to them, but you will answer for what you tried to do here today." Vrexcal closed his eyes. His ancestors would be ashamed. His family would bear the dishonor. But his crew would live. "I surrender," he said quietly. "Wise choice," Chen replied. "Power down your weapons and shields. We will be boarding shortly. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." The connection ended. Vrexcal turned to his weapons officer and gave the hardest order of his life. "Power down all systems. We are done." On the Defiant Resolve, Chen allowed herself a small breath of relief. The Koresh captain had made the smart choice. Good. She had enough violence in her life without adding more bodies to the count. "Send boarding parties," she ordered. "But stay alert. Some of them might decide to go down fighting." Lieutenant Kovich organized the boarding teams, sending Marines in full combat armor to each disabled Koresh ship. They moved with precision, securing corridors and disarming the crew. There were a few Koresh warriors who tried to fight, but they were quickly subdued. Humans might be smaller than the reptilian Koresh, but in zero-gravity combat, size mattered less than training. Chen left the bridge and took a shuttle to the Threen flagship. She needed to speak with Captain Menos directly, to explain what had happened and what would happen next. The shuttle docked with the damaged vessel, and Chen made her way through corridors that showed the signs of battle. Scorch marks from near misses, emergency bulkheads sealed against hull breaches, crew members looking exhausted and traumatized. She found Captain Menos on his bridge, staring at the view screen that showed the disabled Koresh ships. He turned when she entered, his large eyes taking in her uniform and the rank insignia on her shoulder. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "You are real. For a moment I thought we had died, and this was some dream our minds created to ease the passing. You are very much alive," Chen said with a small smile. "And you are going to stay that way." "Why?" Menos asked. The question seemed to burst out of him. "Why did you come?" "We have no alliance with your people, no treaty. You risked your ships and your crew for strangers. This makes no sense to me." Chen had been asked this question before, usually by species who could not understand why humans did what they did. She had learned to answer it simply. "You sent a distress call," she said. "We heard it. That is enough. But you were outside your patrol zone. You had no obligation to respond. Captain Menos, let me tell you something about humans. We are a young species, new to the stars, but we have been sailing ships for thousands of years on our homeworld. And there is a law, older than any government, older than any treaty. When you hear a distress call, you answer. It does not matter if you know them. It does not matter if they can pay you back. You answer, because someday it might be you sending that call. Someday you might be the one who needs someone to answer. Manos was silent for a long moment. Then to Chen's surprise, tears began to roll down his face. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief, of gratitude, of emotions he could not put into words. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for hearing us." Chen reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are welcome. Now let us get your ships patched up enough to limp to the nearest station, and then we have some explaining to do to the Galactic Council." As Chen had predicted, the explaining was not fun. Within hours of the engagement, reports were flooding through the Galactic Communication Network. The Koresh hierarchy filed an immediate protest, claiming that humans had violated their sovereign right to conduct hunting operations. They demanded the return of their ships and crew, and compensation for damages. The Threen Collective, on the other hand, offered immediate alliance with humanity. They provided detailed sensor records of the attack, showing clearly that the Koresh had been engaged in piracy against civilian vessels. They also broadcast the communications from the human ships, including Dr. Tanaka's warning. But the real firestorm came from the thousands of other species who received the data. For centuries, predator species like the Koresh had operated with impunity. They hunted weaker races, taking what they wanted, and the Galactic Council did nothing because the predators were powerful and the prey were not. Now, suddenly, someone had fought back. Someone had shown that predators could be beaten, that hunters could become the hunted. The implications rippled through the galaxy like a shockwave. On a merchant vessel carrying goods from one system to another, a captain who had paid protection money to pirates for years saw the engagement video and started to hope. On a colony world that had been raided by slavers, survivors watched humans defeat 6 Koresh ships and felt something they had not felt in a long time: justice. But not everyone was pleased. In the chambers of several predator governments, leaders watched the same videos with growing anger and fear. The humans had upset the balance. They had shown weakness could be overcome. They had introduced a new variable into the galactic equation. In the Koresh hierarchy's war council, the debate was fierce. Some called for immediate retaliation against humanity. Others urged caution, pointing out that 6 ships had been defeated by 4, and perhaps humans were more dangerous than their databases suggested. In the end, they decided to do what predators always did when faced with unknown danger. They would test the humans again, more carefully this time. They would learn their capabilities, and then they would decide whether to attack or to avoid. But there was one thing they did not consider, one factor they could not account for. Humans did not just fight for themselves. They fought for anyone they decided was under their protection. And once humans decided you were part of their pack, they would fly into hell itself to defend you. The Koresh would learn this lesson eventually, but not before several more of their hunting fleets disappeared, their ships found drifting with dead engines and messages spray-painted on their hulls in multiple languages. You picked the wrong prey. 3 months after the incident, Captain Maria Chen stood in a chamber she had never expected to visit. The Galactic Council Hall was immense, a structure built to house representatives from 300 different species. The architecture was designed to accommodate beings of all sizes, from tiny insectoids to massive silicon-based life forms. Somewhere in this building were diplomats who breathed methane, others who lived in water, and some who existed primarily as energy patterns. Chen wore her dress uniform, dark blue with gold piping and the insignia of the Earth Defense Fleet on her shoulder. Beside her stood Captain Manos, representing the Threen Collective. Behind them, in a separate area reserved for prisoners, stood Vrexkal in restraints. The council chamber itself was circular, with seating arranged in tiers. At the center was a raised platform where those giving testimony would stand. Chen could feel hundreds of eyes on her, some human, most alien. The weight of their attention was heavy. The council chairman, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, activated the chamber's translation systems. When it spoke, the words came from speakers placed throughout the room, rendered in every language simultaneously. This council recognizes Captain Maria, Chen of the human species Earth. You have been summoned to explain the incident that occurred in the Valthene sector 3 months ago. The Koresh hierarchy has filed formal charges against you and your government for acts of piracy and unlawful violence against their vessels. Chen stepped onto the central platform. She had prepared for this moment, had written speeches and practiced arguments. But standing here now, looking at the representatives of hundreds of worlds, she decided to speak from her heart instead. "Honorable council members," she began, "I will keep this simple. 3 months ago, my ship received a distress call. 3 civilian vessels were under attack by 6 military ships. We responded to that call. We defended those civilians, and we captured the attackers. That is the entire story." A representative from a species Chen did not recognize spoke up. Its voice was high-pitched and mechanical. "The Koresh claim you attacked without provocation or warning. They say you violated their hunting rights." "Hunting rights?" Chen repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "Tell me, council member, when did piracy become a right? When did attacking unarmed cargo ships become something the galaxy should tolerate? The Koresh have conducted such operations for 3,000 years, another representative said. This one was reptilian, possibly allied with the Koresh. It is their culture, their way of life. Chen felt her temper rising but kept her voice level. My species also had cultures that practiced things we are not proud of. Slavery, conquest, genocide. We called those things wrong, and we stopped doing them. Culture is not an excuse for cruelty. The chairman's light pulsed. Captain Chen, you are not here to judge the cultural practices of other species. You are here to explain why you attacked Koresh vessels in neutral space. With respect, I am here to explain why I defended civilian ships that were sending distress calls, Chen corrected. The Koresh vessels were not in neutral space conducting peaceful activities. They were actively engaged in an attack. They had disabled shields, damaged engines, and were preparing to board. If we had waited another 10 minutes, the Threen crew would have been dead or captured. Captain Menno stepped forward then, his voice trembling slightly. The council should know that the humans gave the Koresh an opportunity to surrender before resuming fire. After disabling 2 ships with their opening attack, they broadcast a warning. The Koresh chose to continue fighting. Everything that happened after that was self-defense. Self-defense for ships that were not even being attacked, the reptilian representative argued. The humans were not the targets. They inserted themselves into a situation that did not involve them. Chen turned to face the representative directly. A distress call involves everyone who hears it. That is a basic principle of spacefaring. Or has the council decided that some species deserve to be saved while others do not? The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives were arguing with each other in dozens of languages. Some supported Chen's position. Others called for sanctions against humanity. The chairman had to pulse his light several times to restore order. When the chamber quieted, a new voice spoke. It came from a section Chen had been told to expect. The Koresh diplomatic delegation, led by an elderly female named Kreshtar. The humans speak of principles, Kreshtar said, her voice old but strong. But what they do not speak of is jurisdiction. They were in deep space, outside their territory, outside their authority. They appointed themselves as protectors of species they had no treaty with. They set themselves up as judges and executioners. This is dangerous precedent. Chen had expected this argument. Council Chairman, may I ask Representative Kreshtar a question? The chairman's light flickered in what might have been approval. You may. Chen turned to the Koresh representative. If the situation had been reversed, if human civilian ships were under attack and a Koresh military vessel heard our distress call, would they have responded? Kreshtar was silent for a moment. Then honestly she answered, No, we would not involve ourselves in the affairs of others without benefit to ourselves. Then that is the difference between us, Chen said quietly. We respond to distress calls. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We believe that spacefaring species have a responsibility to help each other survive the darkness between stars. If the council finds that wrong, then I suppose we are guilty. In the prisoner area, Vrexikal listened to the arguments flowing around him. He had spent 3 months in human custody, and it had been nothing like he expected. The humans had treated him fairly as promised. Fed him, gave him medical care, even provided him with legal representation. They had not tortured him, had not humiliated him beyond the basic fact of his captivity. He had spent that time thinking about the engagement, replaying it in his mind, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong, and he had come to a realization that sat uncomfortably in his thoughts. The humans had been right. He had been hunting prey, attacking civilians, doing what Koresh had always done. And he had seen nothing wrong with it because that was his culture, his way of life. But watching the council debate now, hearing the arguments, he wondered if culture was enough justification, if tradition excused cruelty. When the council chairman asked if he had anything to add to his defense, Vrexcal surprised everyone by asking to speak. "I was taught that hunting prey was honorable," he said, his words translated and broadcast through the chamber, that taking from the weak was the right of the strong. I believed this because it was what my people had always believed. But I was wrong. The chamber fell silent. A Koresh admitting fault was almost unheard of. "Captain Chen did not attack us without reason," Vrexcal continued. "We were attacking civilians. We were going to board their ships, take their cargo, possibly kill their crew. We were doing this not because we needed to survive, but because we could. Because no one had ever stopped us before. The humans stopped us, and they were right to do so." Kreshitar stood abruptly. "You shame your people with these words." "No," Vrexcal said firmly. "We shame ourselves with our actions. How many species have we raided? How many ships have we destroyed? How many lives have we ended for profit? And we call this honor? The humans showed me something in those 3 months of captivity. They showed me what honor actually looks like. It looks like risking your life for strangers. It looks like answering distress calls even when there is no profit in it. It looks like treating your prisoners with dignity even when they deserve none." The council chamber erupted again, but this time the tone was different. Representatives were not arguing but discussing, considering, thinking about the implications of what they had just heard. The chairman let the discussion continue for several minutes before calling for order. "This council will recess to consider all testimony. We will reconvene tomorrow to deliver a judgment." That night, Chen sat in her temporary quarters on the station, looking out at the stars. Dr. Tanaka brought her a cup of tea, an Earth custom that the doctor insisted helped with stress. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Tanaka asked quietly. "Yes," Chen said without hesitation. "We saved lives. We stopped bad people from doing bad things. How could that be wrong? The council might not see it that way." "Then the council is wrong." Chen took a sip of tea. "Yuki, we are not going to apologize for helping people. If that gets us kicked out of the galactic community, so be it. We will survive. We always have." The next day, the council reconvened. The chamber was packed with representatives from species that had never attended before. Word of the trial had spread, and everyone wanted to see what the galaxy would decide. The chairman spoke. "This council has considered all testimony. We have reviewed the sensor logs, communications records, and tactical data from the incident. We have heard from all parties involved, and we have reached a decision." Chen stood straight, ready to accept whatever came. "Thank you for watching and comment for next part."